Last week we talked about the pedagogical difficulties in Baroque music, and today we launch into classical. I have 3 ideas for you. The first is articulation. Of course, 2-note slurs are up front and center. All the literature at any level has lots of 2-note slurs. But how do you teach your students to do it? Do you ask them to lift or release the second note? Here's what it can sound like. Did you hear the hiccup? When I lifted. Listen again. I just released that time. All students at all levels can do that. It makes huge difference. There's no hiccup if they just release the second note. Now, sometimes we have I guess I call it an inverted, rhythmically inverted 2-note slur, like this one. So we just have to shift the rhythmic strength to that weak beat as it's called for. Now, by far the most difficult aspect of the classical repertoire, though, is linking the little bits and pieces together into a phrase. This becomes more difficult as the literature becomes more difficult, and is most difficult in the music of Haydn because his is the most articulate and has more little bits of pieces, little bits to put together. For this reason, I do not transfer students who read at the intermediate level with classical repertoire if I can help it. I will usually start them in romantic. This is assuming they don't have a strong music background. I will teach them any rhythm issues and how to phrase beautifully, because there's not much in the way of articulation in that style. A lot of notes maybe, but not a lot of articulation. Only after they've learned a lot of other things do I bring them to this style, because I really don't want students to be overwhelmed with correcting 4 things in one measure. I really want them to be able to think about 1 or 2 things at the time. So, linking slurs and bits. For example, here's a little Haydn bit. 4 measures, 4 starts. We hear playing like that a lot, don't you? Don't we? If they can articulate, the articulation was done at the right time. They just weren't linked together. So, especially if you know where your phrase climax is, and I'm just one of those teachers that thinks that needs to be nailed down and written in music. It just, you think past those little bits. And there you have a phrase full of little bits. A phrase full of little bits. I want both and with my students. I want the articulation and I want the phrase. If you get so preoccupied with the articulation, you can forget about the phrase. If you get so preoccupied with the phrasing, you might forget about the articulation. I want both and. I want both. Now, I'm going to stop right here because I'm going to try to pull my videos back to closer to 2 minutes. So next week we'll continue. Hope you have a great week. I am going to put, no, that's next week. If you missed last week, I did have a free handout. It's on Top Music Marketplace if you missed it for the Baroque time period.